The Raiders prepare for preseason game number 2, a very important preseason game number 2. So who or what will I be focusing in on? That plus a whole lot more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for August 16th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. And as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the job that my man Ari does. He does a fantastic job, as a matter of fact, each and every day, getting us on YouTube, making sure we're looking good and we're sounding good. We shout him out. We appreciate him. Check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And you know we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts are coming up in segment number 3. Tons of feedback off all the conversations we've had all week long, but of course a ton of about the quarterback competition that could very well get wrapped up on Saturday versus Dallas Cowboys in preseason game number 2. So your calls and texts in segment number 3. Speaking of that preseason game number 2, who or what will I be focused in on? Again, the quarterback competition is first and foremost. We want to know who's going to be the starting quarterback. It could get wrapped up on Saturday. So I'll tell you not only about the quarterbacks, but every element of the game that I'll really be focused in on at Allegiant Stadium. That comes up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day. Just a couple nuggets that I want to go ahead and pass along about the conversations that we've been having and let you hear from a great Raider in Lincoln Kennedy. We'll get into that in segment number 1 after I tell you about the title sponsor of today's show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So, before we get into some sound from the great Lincoln Kennedy, who was a guest on my radio show on Thursday on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness, the Raiders did have the final practice of the week before their game on Saturday. It was at the indoor facility there at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. I was not there. I can't go to the night show, the night practices, as I mentioned before, because of my night show on ESPN game night, right? So I'm not able to go to that. But just looking at a couple of notes, it was in the indoor, so you knew that it wasn't going to be too big of a practice. It wasn't going to be one that you thought was going to really get after it. But in fact, the Raiders kind of got after it. Paul Gutierrez from ESPN tweeted out, "Wild Raiders camp moment. Robert Spillane and undrafted free agent center Will Putnam got into it twice. Then Max Crosby entered the fray, throwing at least 3 punches at Putnam before ripping Putnam's helmet off and throwing it downfield. The music DJ responded with the Rocky theme, then we are family." So clearly these guys are tired of going up against each other in training camp. And that always happens. And, you know, that's one of the things that I had talked about, earlier in matter of fact, in the week, was the fact that there really was a quiet training camp. There wasn't any, fights or anything. There wasn't anything that got out of control. There wasn't any drama. And I wouldn't consider this drama, but finally they have a little bit of pushing and shoving, a little bit of, you're getting on my nerves, you're irritating me. Finally, we need to get to the regular season so we can stop playing against ourselves, right? And so now that's what happens in training camp. It's just funny that it didn't happen in the heat. It actually happened in the indoor facility. But the final practice in the books, I don't think it was too much more than that, and it's not really going to be a big deal. That just happens in training camp. So now they're ready for this game coming up on Saturday versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I wanted to let you hear a couple sound bites from the great Lincoln Kennedy, who's a guest on my radio show each and every Tuesday and Thursday. He reviews the game that just happened over the weekend, and then on Thursdays he previews the upcoming game. So he was a guest on my show on Thursday, and I had a couple different sound bites that I want you to hear from it. And the first one was talking about the Raiders' way, something that I talked about quite a bit on Thursday's show in segment number 2, the fact that the Raiders are getting back to it. Well, I went and expanded on it on my radio show on Thursday. Got a lot of great feedback. So, of course, Lincoln, he's a very proud Raider, right, through and through. Always talks about the Raiders, talks about the Raider way. I asked him about what he thought with AP and the rest of the staff and the team and the organization really focusing in on and leaning into getting back to the Raider way. Here's Lincoln Kennedy.
Well, the thing is that I'm still closely affiliated with the program, but if you look at, there's a big generational gap, a multi-generational gap, at least from the last time the Raiders had significant success. That's when I was playing. That's over 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't remain like it used to. When I first became a Raiders, I saw guys like Jim Otto, may he rest in peace, Cliff Branch, may he rest in peace, Willie Brown. All these old alumni were around, and they resonated what it meant. They gave you a feel what it meant to be a Raider. Now a little bit has been lost over the transition in the years, and we're trying to get that back. So any way that you can sort of regenerate that or create that positively, that feeling about being what it means to be a Raider, what it means to represent Raider Nation, what it means to be hardcore and want to go out there and just smash people in the mouth, that picks up. That's the Raider way. And I think AP and his staff has brought that back. And look, you noticed it last year when AP took over, there was a difference in the team. You couldn't really put your finger on it until you looked at it closely, but it was the defense. The tenacity of the defense, AP, a former linebacker and a former head coach, brought all of that, along with all the wisdom and the coaches that he's dealing with, from Marvin Lewis and, Tom Coughlin and all these other guys, all brought that together to sort of create and reinstill that Raider way. And we're starting to see that passion show through.
Again, a very proud former member of the Silver and Black. And obviously he stays close to the organization, being part of the radio broadcast along with Jason Horowitz. But this weekend and all preseason season long, as a matter of fact, he's in the booth with JT the Brick and Eric Allen on the radio side of things. Jason Horowitz is on the TV side of things with Rich Gannon and Matt Millen. And that's the reason why I'm doing the pre and the post game show. Very blessed to have that opportunity to be doing it from the torch at Allegiant Stadium coming up on Saturday. So I just wanted you to hear what he had to say about the Raider way. Again, something that I talked about quite a bit on Thursday's show. I also wanted to ask him about JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, the fact that, he was activated off the PUP list on Wednesday, and, it's going to be a long shot to get him ready for week 1. But I asked Lincoln Kennedy from an offensive lineman point of view, how long do you think, or what kind of ramp-up period do you think JPJ is going to be looking for and looking like, as he's getting ready for the upcoming season?
Well, you take into consideration what the injuries were and then what he's battling with, and then you think about how that's going to manifest. You might not see him in this first game. It's a pretty quick turnaround if you think about it, from being activated Wednesday. Then you can go out there and do the things at practice, but you don't have a lot of practices left before Saturday. And so I didn't really see him much in the practice yesterday. I don't even know if he was out there, to be honest with you. So much was going on in the field at Allegiant Stadium. But, it's not a whole lot of sample size. It's not a whole lot of practice time to get him back in the game shape before you throw him out there.
So there's Lincoln Kennedy talking about just kind of the ramp-up period for JPJ. But I wanted to go and extend a little bit further because, again, AP has already said that it's going to be a long shot for him to make week 1, which doesn't mean he won't play week 1. He's just not expected on week 1 just yet. He's got to go out there and put in the work. And even on Thursday at the Raiders practice at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, he was off to the side wearing the red jersey, and he was putting in individual work. So he wasn't still even working with the team. So, again, he's ramping up. So I asked Lincoln, if JPJ is not ready for week 1, when do you think he could be ready to go?
Well, I've always believed that offensive linemen have to learn trial by fire.
Okay.
You're not going to make the club in the tub, and you're not going to make the club sitting on the sideline and holding a clipboard. So, you got to go out there and play. You got to get used to the speed. I remember playing against Chris Mims on the Rams when I was a Falcon, my first game, and I swear he ran around me so damn fast. I thought I missed the play. He got around the horn, and you was like, oh my gosh! I woke up and was like, you know what? This is real. This is real football. So I had to come back to the huddle and came back for the second play. And Jamie Dukes was my center. He was like, big boy, you got to block him. I said, yeah, I know. I messed up. That was my indoctrination as a freshman. You know what I mean? A rookie, I should say, coming into the game. So you got to get out there. You got to play. You got to see it firsthand, and you can't necessarily duplicate it in practice. That's why games are important. But when you're coming off of an injury, you got to really be slow like they were with Tyrese Wilson last year.
There's Lincoln Kennedy talking about you got to, take it easy, similar to what they did with Tyree Wilson a year ago. So there's no telling when JPJ is going to be available. I'm glad he's off the PUP list. Didn't want him to miss the first 4 weeks automatically, right? Not have any shot to play in the first 4 weeks. Again, it's going to be a long shot for week 1. I would actually be surprised if he's in there week 2, if he doesn't play in week 1. I would actually look at week 3 against the Carolina Panthers, the home opener, as being realistic, the shot for JPJ to play if he's not ready to go week 1 against the Chargers. I also wanted you to hear a soundbite from my guy, Vinny Bonsignore. Again, I really leaned into the Raider Way conversation that we had on the podcast, really leaned into it on my radio show. And Vinny's not a Raiders fan. And that's why I like to ask him questions like this, because he talks to a lot of people around the league, a lot of people that I don't talk to. He's got a lot of connections. That's why I love having him on my show and love having him on the radio station in general, because what he's talking about is not from a silver and black point of view, but it's realistic, and it's what he's hearing and it's what he's seeing. So I asked him straight up, how much have you seen the Raiders organization lean into the Raider way since November 1st, since AP took over?
Quite a bit, and I tell the story a lot, but I reached out to an NFL general manager and I said, I want to put you in Mark Davis's shoes. What would you do in terms of naming your head coach after he had fired, Josh McDaniels? And the description that he laid out, as it turns out, and it was all about somebody that embodied the Raider way, took care of that, respected it, didn't fight it, embraced it, because there's something to be said about being a Raider. There's something to be said about that mantra and that mindset. And he needed a leader, he being Mark Davis, of his football team that exemplified that. And, it was uncanny. And I've reached out to that general manager since and said, you nailed it, because to me, Antonio Pierce, and so did Mark Davis, by the way,
yeah.
in naming him the interim coach and then obviously giving the job to him full time. This was the vision that Mark Davis had in mind when he made this decision, and I know that because he said so at the time that he made that decision, and he felt like Antonio was going to embody all those things, be the leader that he needed in that locker room, be the coach that the fans responded to, the building in Henderson responded to, the alumni responded to, and connected with, and so all those boxes have been checked off, and I feel like this is back to the Raider way. And I go back with the Raiders, I'm not a fan, that, but I covered them all the way back when I was a senior in high school in Los Angeles, traveling with them and, and covering games at the LA Coliseum. And that's the Raiders that I knew. And that's the Raiders that I always remembered watching as a kid. And I feel like they're getting closer and closer to that. That doesn't mean they're going to go out and win the Super Bowl this year, but I think in time, especially if they get that quarterback position ultimately figured out, I think the right coach is in place for all those things to happen.
I thought that was a great answer. I really did, and really could appreciate it when you passed that along on my radio show on Thursday, and I have him on my show every single Thursday at 2:30 just talking about the Raiders. But, again, when people outside the organization could see that you got away from being who you are, and that's what you need to get back to, I think that that's telling. And that's exactly what the team is doing. And that, to me, is refreshing. That doesn't mean that they're going to go win 10 games and go to the playoffs. But just knowing that they're getting back to being who they are, right? There's 31 teams in the league, and then there's the Raiders. Knowing that they're getting back to them. And at the same time, AP's talking about they're pissed off, tired of losing. They're sick of it. They're ready to get back to pride and poise and commitment to excellence. And I believe him, because last time he said it, they did it when they went to Kansas City and won on Christmas. He was tired of losing. The team was tired of losing, and they did something about it. Now it's up to them to do something about, the regular season and not going to the playoffs consistently. It's up to AP and this team to figure it out. Regardless who the quarterback is, figure it out. What did Smokey's mama say on Friday? Make it work. Right? This ain't enough. Make it enough. It's just that simple. So I thought that was a good little nugget right there from Vinny Bonsignore. And speaking of nuggets, I wanted to pass this along as well. This will be the final one for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Little news and notes of the day. The Henderson baseball team, Paseo Verde, the Little League team, they defeated New York Staten Island 9-1 in the opening round of the Little League World Series. Why am I passing this along? Well, one, it's a local team here in Henderson, but it's also the team is managed by Adam Johnson, who is the assistant equipment manager for the Silver and Black. So I thought that that's really cool. A nice little tie-in right there. Of course, the Little League World Series is going on. I've been checking it out, watching it on ESPN. I think it's fantastic. Kids out there just living their best life, having a great time, but knowing that there's a Raiders connection and a local connection. So we definitely root on for the Paseo Verde Little League team. Again, they beat Staten Island on Thursday 9-1 to advance to the next round of the Little League World Series. Coming up in segment number 2, what am I going to be looking for in this very important preseason game number 2 versus Dallas Cowboys? That's coming up next on today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. What is Gametime? I'm glad you asked. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. But it's not just Major League Baseball tickets. You can get any sporting events. You can get any concerts, any comedy, any theater. They've got you covered. They've got the last-minute deals. They got the flash deals. They've got zone deals. All-in pricing. All it does is you could check out everything. It includes everything that you need to know on this feature. So it's something that you definitely want to check out. You can see the views from your seat before you buy your tickets, and it's got the lowest price guarantee, which is everything that everyone cares about, right? So right now, all you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets or any tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Again, the terms do apply. Create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to deep dive into what I'm going to be looking for, who I'm going to be looking for in preseason game number 2 coming up Saturday at Allegiant Stadium. The next 2 games are at Allegiant Stadium. Excited about that opportunity to be in the building, be at the Torch, do the pregame and the postgame show. Should be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. This is a very important game, as AP has said that he feels like he's going to make a decision on who the starting quarterback is going to be following this game, because they got to get prepared for week 1 regular season versus the LA Chargers. So first and foremost, the number one thing we'll be looking at, obviously, is the quarterback competition. O'Connell versus Minshew. I believe Minshew will get the start, as O'Connell got the start last game. He played the first quarter, and Minshew played the second quarter. So I believe it's going to, the roles are going to reverse. Minshew will start the first quarter. O'Connell will get the second quarter, and hopefully Aiden O'Connell gets more drives than he got in week 1, right? He only had the 1 drive. It was a very lengthy drive. It was a very effective drive. Saw some really good things from him, but would like to see him out there more. Would like to see him get a good 3 or 4 drives under his belt like Gardner Minshew was able to. And hopefully, similar to what Gardner did on week 1 versus Minnesota, gets an opportunity to execute the 2-minute drill. Right? That's you just want to see all that situational football and see what he looks like. Again, Minshew fell into a great opportunity in a great situation week 1. Hopefully Aiden O'Connell gets that same situation. And what will I be looking for from the quarterbacks? Well, what AP is looking for. And this is what he told ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. He's looking for consistency, command of the huddle, most importantly, someone who's going to take care of the football. So just think of that while you're watching the game on Saturday. You're looking for consistency, command of the huddle, and most importantly, someone who'll take care of the football. And, you could probably say, well, Q, how are you going to know if he has command of the huddle? Look, those delay of game penalties, right? The Raiders had 3 of them week 1 against Minnesota, but 1 was on Gardner Minshew. And as Lincoln Kennedy told me, Q, those delay of game penalties, that's on the quarterback, right? Your number one job when you break the huddle is to locate the play clock and see how much time you have. And if you don't have time to get off the call the way that it's designed, even Lincoln Kennedy told me on Thursday, you make up something, but you get the snap off. You cannot afford, and this offense cannot afford to get behind the sticks, right? They can't afford to have that 5-yard delay of game penalty. You just can't. Those unforced mistakes, they can't do that. They're going to have to stay ahead of the chains. And, to their credit, last week when they did get behind the chains, and it was, 3rd and 11 after that 5-yard penalty, that's when Minshew hit Trey Tucker for 44 yards. But that's not going to happen that often. It's just not. I mean, this is not an offense, I'll tell you right now, that you're going to see them taking a bunch of deep shots. They're going to take a chance every once in a while, try to stretch the field. It's not going to happen that often. They got lucky and they were able to, execute that play. Trey Tucker made a hell of a catch, but this offense cannot get behind, the sticks. They just really can't. They got to stay on schedule. So those little penalties like that you should never get, those delay of games, you can't have that. So that's part of command of the huddle. And also being able to, spit out the play call at a certain time, like get it in your helmet, get it in your ear, and then boom, spit it out and not have to direct traffic and see guys confused on where they're supposed to be going, right? That's all part of it. Just see how the guys operate. So that's what the command of the huddle is. But AP told Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, he was looking for consistency, command of the huddle, and most importantly, someone who's going to take care of the football. So when one of these guys want to win the job, don't turn the rock over, right? I mean, and don't think about it, because if you're thinking man, a slow man, right? Don't think about it, but don't turn the ball over. And they did a good job last week against Minnesota. They didn't turn the ball over. So that was definitely a step in the right direction. So outside of the quarterback competition, what else am I going to be looking for? Well, how about some offensive weapons? And I don't mean Devontae. I don't mean Jacoby. Hell, I don't mean Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. I know that those guys are there. I'm thinking about Trey Tucker, who clearly is the number 3 wide receiver. And I think he's definitely number 3 with a big lead. And then the other guys right behind him, DJ Turner, Christian Wilkerson. I think those guys are battling out for wide receiver number 4. DJ Turner had a touchdown catch a week ago against Minnesota. I'd like to see him get more involved. Obviously, he has special teams ability as well in the return game, and even as a gunner, he does some really good things. He's got speed. Turner the burner is what they called him. I would like to see him, be more involved in the offense, and I know he'd like to be more involved in the offense. All training camp, he looked like he was getting more involved. Now, that does not slight Christian Wilkerson, because he did as well, especially when Devontae was gone, when he went to be with his wife while they were preparing for the birth of their baby. Christian Wilkerson got a lot of burn. The only thing about him is doesn't really do special teams. So if it comes down to one spot, the guy who's probably going to get it is the guy who excels on special teams. That'd be DJ Turner. But I'd like to see these guys out there in the offensive scheme, what they look like, because Turner and Wilkerson, I do believe, are battling it out for the number 4 spot. So we'd like to see these guys get more involved. Obviously, you'll see them more in the second quarter and in the second half of the game. Offensive line play. How about that? DJ Glaze continue to develop. And I really believe DJ Glaze needs to develop more, right? And continue to be seen, because I think he's going to play a big factor. I have no doubt in my mind, right? And I don't know this from anywhere, but just what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, and knowing that Thayer Munford has been banged up with his hands, and that's going to be very hard to block with jacked up hands, even though Lincoln Kennedy told me his whole rookie year he played with a club on his hand, right? But that's Lincoln Kennedy, and he's a special dude. Right, Thayer Munford, this is the first opportunity he's going to get to try to be the right tackle, and now both hands are jacked up. I think DJ Glaze at some point is going to be in that starting lineup. So I really want to focus in on him. He gave up a sack in the first game against Minnesota, just a play that he'd love to get back. You just can't do what he did, allow to get that inside look and get a straight beeline to the quarterback. I just want to see him continue to work, because he hasn't blinked. He hasn't acted like the moment is too big for him. And the Raiders really might have themselves a dude on their hands if he can continue to grow. And so DJ Glaze in particular on that offensive line, I'm really focused in on. We know at some point Colton Miller will be the starting left tackle. We know at some point JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, will be the starting left guard. For now, Cody Whitehair holds down that spot at the left guard. Colton Miller will be back sooner rather than later. Andrews Pete is holding that spot down. And then also offensively, I want to see more of the run game. Zamir White, running back 1, Alexander Madison, running back 2. Want to see some more Dylan Lobby, right? When he got into the action in week 1 against Minnesota, he didn't really do anything, right? Now, again, he was out there with Anthony Brown, who really didn't do anything. But Dylan Lobby didn't do too much. He got a lot of attention in training camp. I'd like to see him get a little bit of game action, see what he can do, because I do think he plays a role. I don't think he really gets into the offensive game plan till later on in the season, but I just would like to see a little something of what he can do. So the running game, I'd like to see a little bit more. We didn't see a whole lot week 1 versus Minnesota. So that's the offense. Obviously, it goes along with the quarterback competition. How about the defense? Run defense has to be improved. They gave up 142 yards on the ground last week versus the Vikings. And some of that was the first team defense as well. They've got to be a lot better than they were. I don't care how good the defense looks in training camp. I don't care how much I've given the defense props and said that they're going to be such a great defense. If you can't stop the run, you're not going to win any games. You're just not, right? And they're not going to have any reason to throw the ball if they can run the ball on will, just with their will like they did week 1. 142 yards on the ground. That's not acceptable. So that run defense, I'm hoping Patrick Graham, I'm hoping Robbie Leonard, I'm hoping all these coaches, Mike Caldwell, everyone is really focused in on making sure they stop the run. Don't allow that to happen another week in a row. They just can't. So that's going to be the first thing I'll be looking at when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Second and third team guys play better than they did week 1. You expect them to continue to develop, right? So guys like DeCam Richardson, 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State, MJ Devonshire, 7th-round pick out of Pitt. And look, he's fighting for a job. DeCam, I think he's definitely going to make it, but Devonshire, he's definitely competing for a job. Second-year guy, Byron Young, 3rd-round pick out of Bama, right? I mean, he didn't play too well week 1. He's got to be better. Tommy Eichenberg, if he's healthy, he didn't play week 1. He was dealing with a little something. And I know on Wednesday when they had the practice at Allegiant Stadium, he didn't participate in that. He was out there in street clothes and had one of those compression leg compressors on one of his legs. So I don't know what he's dealing with. They don't have to put out an injury report right now. But if Tommy Eichenberg is healthy, I like to see him out there competing as backup there for Robert Spillane. And then a couple defensive ends, Charles Snowden and Janarius Robinson. Want to see some more from them as well. They've turned some heads in training camp. I want to see them continue to develop and grow in the preseason. They did pretty good, I thought, against the Vikings, and they had a couple plays that they made that ended up getting called back and wasn't a fumble. The tuck rule crept up on them again, but would like to see some more from Charles Snowden and Janarius Robinson. Just got a couple more things that I'm paying attention to on Saturday's game versus the Dallas Cowboys, preseason game number 2. Kickoff and the kick return, with this new kickoff rule. I would like to see that continue to develop. Carlson continue to tinker with things, and I'd like to see some more of the run game, return game, I should say. Excel. I think that they did pretty good. If they can get to the 30-yard line or past it, that's a win for the return game. So I'd like to see the Raiders returners do pretty well in that, and I thought that they did a good job last week. So most teams that I've been seeing haven't done a whole lot in the return game. Thought the Raiders did a pretty good job, but you just got to get more work in. It's that simple. And then finally, probably one of the most important things I'm looking for, better coaching towards the end of the game, right? Situational football, they've got to be on their A game, man. That those timeouts that AP called at the end that he said he wouldn't do again, those are the things that I'm glad it happened in the preseason. Just don't want to see it again. So I just want that situational football, the coaching, to be a lot better towards the end, and all the communication with those coaches on the staff, especially with the Marvin Lewises, the Joe Philbins, guys that have been there, done that. Just want that to be a little bit tighter so they don't make those kind of mistakes again. So that's really what I'm looking for. Obviously, the quarterback competition, the offensive weapons from the wide receivers, the 3-4 wide receivers, Trey Tucker, DJ Turner, Christian Wilkerson. Offensive line with DJ Glaze. The run game with Zamir White, Alexander Madison, and Dylan Lobby. The run defense got to be improved. Second and third team guys, the young guys got to be improved. Kickoff return, that game continue to develop, and better coaching at the end of the game. Situational football is what I'm looking for in preseason game number 2 versus Dallas Cowboys coming up on Saturday. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We'll get right to that after I tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified professionals that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And they're not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even the ones that aren't looking actively for a new job but might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, guess what? You're in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and even quicker. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Spokane Raider. He's calling to give us a little history lesson, taking us back to some iconic games in Raiders history and growing up as a Raider fan, and why he thinks the quarterback situation will be all right. Here he is, Spokane Raider.
This is Spokane Raider. Q, love your show. Been listening this year. I lived in the South Bay, San Jose. My dad bought season tickets to the Oakland Raiders when I was 16. I'm now in my 70s. I was at the Heidi game, the Holy Roller, goes to the post, Madden the coach. They used to call it Family Day. We got to get on the field. I think it was only one day during practice. I don't recall exactly. Remember walking over and meeting some of the Raiders, and my dad told me as a high school kid that was just so excited. He said, remember, they're just human beings. But it was really exciting to grow up as a Raiders fan in Oakland or near Oakland to see the whole thing. Just want to make a couple more comments, and that is in the old days, and I know the game has changed substantially, but I remember one of the Raiders after shows after the game, we always listen to the wrap-up, talking about the offense excites the crowds, but the defense wins the games. Now, I'm not going to say that's still true in today's football world, but there's a lot to it. I mean, if you look at how we beat Kansas City on Christmas, it was the defense. And if you look at, a defense that never allowed any points and you scored some, you would win every game. Of course, it's impossible to put that kind of pressure on the defense. I realize that. What I'm trying to say is I think this quarterback thing, I think we're okay either way. We have so many weapons on offense. As long as the O-line can hold up, I think we're going to be fine. Yeah, I think there's a big difference between O'Connell and Minshew, and I'm glad we have them both.
Spokane, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Great feedback. Really is. And, yeah, the defense is going to be the leader in the clubhouse of the team. No doubt about it. And as long as they get good, consistent quarterback play, the team will have a chance to surprise some folks. And I do believe that that's going to happen. I don't believe that you need an elite quarterback to get where you need to go, which is the playoffs. But they've got to go out there and get that good, consistent quarterback play, regardless if that's Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, or a combination of the both. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Tim in Southern Oregon. Hey, Q, it's Tim from Southern Oregon. I'm all in on the Raider way. It's about damn time the organization gets back to its roots. I would love to see the team adopt the phrase, shut them up. Shut up the media and the naysayers. Shirts with that phrase that the team wears in warm-ups and under their pads. It's just a thought I had. I'm looking forward to the season. Just shut them up, Raiders. That's from Tim in Southern Oregon. And, yeah, that's probably what they're saying. Probably not in those words. They may be a little bit more colorful. But, yeah, I'm sure that those are exactly what they're saying, right? And that's why Jack Jones and Robert Spillane came out during training camp and was like, yeah, we're pissed off. We don't like that, right? They think that we're only going to win 6 games. Jack Jones said, you're telling me I'm going to lose 11, only win 6? I'm not okay with that. Like, that's the kind of attitude you want these guys to have. You want them to have a reason to have an edge and have a little something in their neck. That's positive. I like it. And I think that it's going to show its the results of that on the field. I think that the defense has a chance to be special. I think Jack Jones has a chance to be special and really be a difference maker. And that's what the Raiders need is difference makers. For the longest, their difference maker was Max Crosby. Now they got difference makers on both sides of the ball. That's something to get excited about. And that's why I think that this season could be something that we look back on later and it's like, yep, remember that season? Remember how many people were shocked and surprised by what they did? There's many reasons for that, and that's because they have plenty of difference makers, I think, on the roster. But, Tim, thanks for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call, and I couldn't understand the name. First-time caller from Texas. He's calling to talk about the quarterback position and the last draft, his thoughts on some quarterbacks that were drafted, and he has a guy in mind that the Raiders didn't select that he thinks maybe they should have. Here he is, a first-time caller out of Texas.
Hey, Q. This is Rahul, first-time caller out of Texas. I know that area code says 858, but Raiders fan for life here, and I have a couple comments about the QB situation. I feel like every caller on your show does. First, it's not about any of the QBs on the roster. It's about Spencer Rattler. I actually, I like to do something where I predict who's going to be good out of every single class. And my order for this class was Caleb, number 1. And I didn't even really watch tape. I just figured, everybody on earth is telling me that this guy is Jesus. Maybe not Jesus. Sorry, poor choice of words. But, I'll take their word for it. And then I had Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy. And below them, I actually had Rattler myself because I just really thought, he's always running around for his life in South Carolina. He still looked good at times. Got the ball out really quick. And he seems to be doing good in preseason. So my thoughts were, why didn't we pick him up in the 5th or the 6th? I know I like the guys that we got there in Dylan Laube and Eichenberg, but why didn't we take a flyer on one of those late round QBs like a Joe Milton or a Rattler? And, this is even coming from somebody that's an Aiden O'Connell fan. I really think that he's going to be the starter, and I like his poise. I like, old school type of football he's playing. But yeah, that's all I have for you. Thank you. Love your work, man. Bye.
Thanks so much for the call. It sounded like you said Raul, but I don't want to throw your name out there and be wrong, so I guess I just did that. So my bad. But thanks for the call. I appreciate you. You look, and the bottom line is Tom Telesco said we didn't like any quarterback after the a couple that they saw at the top of the draft that are better than the ones that they had. I mean, they literally looked at a couple quarterbacks, said, yeah, we'll draft those guys if we can get them. They couldn't get them. And then the other guys are like, yeah, we have those guys already. It's Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. So they didn't – it was just that simple. They didn't feel comfortable drafting someone just for the sake of drafting someone. I think that's good. If they didn't believe in them, please don't go draft him, right? Spencer Rattler, maybe he's going to be good. Joe Milton, I'm not really that high on Joe Milton. I know he played well preseason game number 1, but did you see last night? Did you see preseason game number 2? I think he threw for 20 yards, didn't look too good, and tried to basically just run through everybody. that's going to get you knocked out the league. Ask Anthony Richardson. You can't just try to run over these guys. You will get injured. Anthony Richardson got injured after 4 games, and he's bigger than Joe Milton. He's stronger than Joe Milton, and he's faster than Joe Milton. And after 4 games, he had not only a concussion that knocked him out of 1 game, but he also had a shoulder injury that knocked him out for the rest of the season. Just can't play that style. So, they might end up being good quarterbacks, but if the Raiders passed on them, and which they obviously did, and they turned out to be good, I think that everyone will be okay with that. I think if you're going to get a quarterback, you want to get one. You want to get one that you believed was going to be really special. But thanks for the call, my man. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, I just got time for a couple more. Got a text from Andy Raider fan in Brooklyn. It says, Q, how concerned are you about who's lining up opposite of Jack Jones as cornerback 2? Bennett is unproven and a big risk. Faison is injury prone. If Jack Jones misses time, it looks bleak. We seem to lack depth. Are you surprised they haven't brought in a vet quarterback to compete? That's from Andy Raider fan in Brooklyn. Thanks so much, Andy, for the text. I appreciate you. And honestly, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about it. And I know that, Jack Jones has got to get through the season, healthy. They're going to need him out there. That's a very pivotal part of that secondary. But I think Ja'Cory Bennett's going to be really good. I really do. I don't think he's a big risk at all, right? I think he got a little bit banged up his rookie year. He got thrown into the fire, and, it was hard to come back. But his confidence is there. He's been flying around. He was flying around all training camp. He looked good in preseason game number 1. We'll see what it looks like on Saturday. But I'm very confident in that secondary. Faison, you're right. He is injury prone, but there's other guys. I think by the time that maybe you need somebody, some depth, maybe that's when a DeCam Richardson will start to develop. Tom Telesco told us he didn't want to bring in a veteran cornerback, just to bring a guy in. He said there's some guys out there right now that have a big name, but their game isn't really much better than the guys that they have right now. So he didn't want to stop the growth of somebody else just to bring in a name that's, one, going to cost a lot more money, and you might not really get too much more out of. So, no, I'm not really surprised that they haven't brought in a cornerback. Now, if someone gets banged up before the season starts, then maybe they do. But I know Steven Nelson was a guy that they were interested in, and then he up and retired. So once he retired, they just kind of really bowed out of it. I think that they probably have some interest in Stephon Gilmore, but I think he's going to cost more money than they really want to spend. And again, the guys that are out there performing right now and playing right now, they look pretty stinking good. So we'll see how it shakes out. But they have plenty of money, $34 million plus in salary cap space. So if they need to, make a call and break glass and bring someone in, they can. So I wouldn't be too worried about it at this stage of the game. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Rod in Modesto, calling to talk about the opportunity he's going to have in October to be at Allegiant Stadium to check out the Raiders and Steelers for his first game at Allegiant. Here he is, Raider Rod in Modesto.
Hey, Q, this is Raider Rod, calling out of Modesto. Just wanted to touch on the little, first of all, I just want to say you do an amazing job. Listen to your podcast every day, every morning. The little music clip that you played got me pumped up. I got to check out the video, but got me pumped up for the season. And in October versus the Steelers, I'll be attending my first Allegiant game. I haven't seen the stadium yet. I've been to many Oakland games, but yeah, against the Steelers. My coworker actually hooked me up. Her son works for the Raiders, and she said we're going to be on field with the players, so that got me psyched up. I'm trying to get as many autographs as I can for my son, who won't be with me, just me and my wife. And yeah, ready for the season. Don't like all the hate that's going on, but we're the Raiders. The hate's going to come no matter what. So I'm excited to see AP. Excited to see everybody do their thing. And love your show. Keep doing what you're doing. And, yeah, check you out. Raider Rod out.
Raider Rod, thanks for the call. That's going to be fun and exciting, man. Thinking about that game at Allegiant Stadium, you being in attendance. And, again, that game versus Steelers last season was one that I thought that the Raiders had no business losing. They did. It was very questionable the way that Josh McDaniels took care of that situation. The situational football was not good, in my opinion, last year against the Steelers. I thought there were some questionable decisions that he made. And I thought that there was no reason why the Raiders lost that game. They had terrible quarterback play. Their offense was very suspect, and they couldn't get enough done to get it done. So, yeah, that'll be a good one. That'll be a nice little revenge game. And obviously, the Steeler fan base travels well. So hopefully Raider Nation shows up and shows out and drowns out the folks with the terrible towels in October. But Raider Rod, thanks for that call. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Debbie in the 209. Debbie Deb says, this is Debbie from the 209. Quick story on how I became a Raider fan. In 1976, my uncle was a season ticket holder and a huge Raider fan. They were going to the playoffs, and he needed help opening his business so that he could stand in line to buy the playoff tickets. He told me if I helped my aunt, he would buy me a ticket. My first Raider game was the AFC playoffs, the Steelers versus the Raiders, Kenny Stabler versus Terry Bradshaw. I still have the ticket stub. It was only $15. The Raiders won, and I've been a fan ever since. Even though my aunt and uncle moved to Idaho soon after, they remained loyal fans, and they were still season ticket holders. I got to go to all the games that they could not make it with a friend of mine. Unfortunately, my uncle got cancer and had to give up his tickets. Once I got a little older, I became a season ticket holder myself. Me and my friend would go to the games. He fought cancer for 17 years. My aunt was his caregiver and never left his side. 1 year ago on August 17th, he passed away. In his memory, I dug into my savings, and on October 25th, my 83-year-old aunt and my dear friend and her daughter are all flying into Vegas for the Chiefs game. We don't care about anything about the glitz and glamour of Vegas, just the game. So here's to you, Uncle Jim. You'd be so proud of the Raider legacy you passed on, and your girls would be loud and proud to be at the game. Hoping to swing by and meet you too, Q. Always start my day with Locked On. Go Raiders. That's from Debbie Deb in the 209. That's a fantastic story, Debbie. Thanks so much for passing that story along. And you know what? You probably just fueled someone else's Raider fandom. And you rest assured that even if someone didn't tell you that, just you being a Raider fan, the loyal Raider fan that you've been for so long, probably inspired someone else to be a Raider fan for so long, because that's how it happens, right? We pass it along to the youth and to the younger ones. So, Debbie, fantastic story. And I guarantee I'll be at the Torch that day when the Chiefs come to town. I'll be at the Torch, so would love to meet you, love to chop it up, talk a little Raider football with you, and hopefully cheer on the Raiders to a victory on that day. But fantastic story. Thanks for closing us out on the show. Thanks for closing us out on the week. So Raider Nation, there it is. There it was. Enjoy the game coming up on Saturday. Again, I'll be part of the official pregame show. I'm not too sure who I'm actually doing the pregame show with. I was told it was going to be the Hall of Famer Mike Haynes, but it has not been confirmed, and it's Friday now. So we'll find out, I guess, on Saturday. Maybe I'll find out on Saturday. But if you're going to be at Allegiant Stadium, please come by the Torch and say what's up. We'll be there 2 hours before kickoff, and would love to, like I said, chop it up and talk some Raider football with you and get ready for this game that could be very important. Could find out who's going to be the Raiders quarterback for 2024. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family, enjoy the game on Saturday, and most importantly, as always, just win, baby.